Press the 7th button on the navigation toolbar to open the Professional Resources form. We're going to identify each of the resources that represent each company in the database. First, we need to enter data for the resources. The very first tab is titled Web Resources. Because of its importance, there's a separate tutorial movie just for this form. For now, we're going to learn about the professional resources that make up the remaining tabs of the form. There are 6 Professional Resources tabs located just under the Company tab and to the right of the Web Resources tab. We'll go through each of these pages, but because most of them are so similar, we'll only enter data on the pages that are unique. As we move through the pages, notice the lower right corner of each page. When there are no records for a selected professional resource and a company tab is selected, the first option is either no attorney, no accountant, etc., indicating that the selected company does not have an attorney or an accountant, and so forth. I'm going to create a new record for a brokerage by pressing the New button on the standard toolbar. When I do, a new brokerage titled New Broker Record appears, and text boxes in the lower right corner of the form appear. This information is specific to the selected company and the selected brokerage, while the rest of the page relates only to the selected resource. For example, select brokerage, select a company, then select the broker that represents the selected company. Enter data pointed to represent the company, as well as the brokerage account number and the name of the account. This information is unique to each brokerage for each company. I'm going to quickly enter the rest of the data for the broker. Notice that I can select different brokerages, and the data for that brokerage appears. Now I can change it if needed. Be sure that you have the correct broker selected for each company prior to leaving the page. The resident agent, attorney, and accountant resources are required for some of the documents in the Create Documents form. This information is needed to create the documents, and data is automatically inserted into some of the documents in the database. For example, articles of incorporation require that a resident agent be associated with a company. Select the Resident Agent tab. Notice that the form is a little different than the other professional resources. This is because a company can have different resident agents in different states and Canadian provinces. So there's a list of state and provincial designations on the right side of the page. Start by selecting a Company tab. Then select a state or province for the company that you want to designate a resident agent for. Then select the name of the resident agent for that state. Notice that when we do this, an asterisk appears next to the state. If you selected the wrong state and there's actually no resident agent in that state, just select the No Resident Agent option and the asterisk disappears. The purpose of the asterisk is to permit you to scroll through the states and provinces to identify which states, provinces, and territories the selected company has a resident agent in. It's important to understand that a resident agent is basically a person who will accept legal documents for the company in the state, province, or territory that the company does business in. It's not necessarily a company that's paid to represent a business in a state. I want to quickly run through the process of creating a resident agent record and identifying the agent for a company in a number of states. We'll start by selecting a company, then selecting a state, then pressing the New button on the standard toolbar. I'll quickly enter data for this resident agent. Then I'll enter the data in the lower right corner of the page for the selected company and the selected resident agent for the selected state. The data in the lower right can be different for each company and each resident agent, but it can also be different for each state, province, or territory. Now I'll press a tab for a different company and select the state that I want to designate a resident agent for. Then I'll select the name of the resident agent. We need to enter the data in the lower right corner for the selected company, state, and resident agent. Each company needs to have data entered in a similar manner for each state where it has a resident agent. The No Resident Agent option needs to be selected for states where a company does not have a designated resident agent. Notice that on each of the resident agent pages there's a button that's a web link to related resources. For example, if you don't have a resident agent in a specific state, you can press the Secretary of State button on the resident agent page, and it will link you to a list of states. Click on the name of a state and it will either display a list of resident agents in that state, or it is a resource that you can use to get a list of resident agents. The Commercial Attorneys button on the Attorneys page leads you to resources that will help you identify a commercial attorney. There are similar buttons on each of the resource pages. These resources are not associated with instructional software or any of its affiliates, and we don't recommend or promote any of these resources. They are provided as a reference, and it will require you to research specific companies before making a decision to use any of them. This concludes the tutorial for professional resources.